All right, Randy, I'll turn it to you.
Okay, I had a question for Craig. Is Craig being the city attorney in this?
No, I am not. I'm being the appeal authority attorney.
Oh, okay, the appeal authority attorney.
Yeah, I'm counsel to the appeal authority. Chad, who's also in the meeting, he's the city attorney. So he represents the city. I represent the appeal authority.
Okay, so Craig, just for clarification, we just start by hearing one of the applicants first and then discuss it and maybe vote on it. And then we hear the second one. Is that what we do?
Yeah, and you can, if you want to, can decide in this meeting, or if you want to have a chance to deliberate about this, that's up to the appeal authority. So
Okay.
You can either decide now or defer the decision and have a session of deliberation. That's really up to you.
Can I ask, this is Stephanie Swan, can I ask a follow-up on that? If there is a decision to deliberate, what is the time frame for making the decision after deliberation?
We would try to do it as quickly as we could, assuming we could have the deliberation. We try to do it sometime next week and have the decision then. They don't have to deliberate. That's up to the appeal authority.
Sure.
Okay, then let me introduce the appeal authority to everyone. I'm Randy Simmons. I'm the chair. A decade ago, I was mayor and did time as a member of the council. So notice I said did time. Mary and I have been on this committee for a long time together. Mary, do you want to do anything, say anything to introduce yourself?
Hi. No, I'm good. No, this is going to be different doing it this way than in person. So
Yep.
Please bear with me. I've never done one of these before, ever.
Oh, wow. Well, welcome to the new world.
Yeah, I don't like it.
And Ed,
Yes.
tell us who you are, please.
My name is Ed Banda. I'm retired. I was in construction for over 30 years, commercial construction. I used to build hospitals and parking structures solely for Kaiser Permanente, and I retired from them after working for them for 24 years and retired in Providence.
Okay, well, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So first up, we have the Providence Hollow subdivision discussion. So who's speaking for Providence Hollow subdivision? Lot 20.
Stephanie Swan, that's me.
Okay. Hey, by the way, Stephanie, I really appreciated the packet that you put together. You
Thank you, Randy.
because we've had people come before us who thought that they would just walk in and explain it all to us and not give us any explanation. So thank you very much for that. It really is helpful. Other than I had to drive that road 5 times to find the lot.
Once you know where it is, though, you'll never forget.
No.
That's good. That is good. Okay, so I don't know how this works. Do you go, how do we go about this?
You tell us why you want a variance and how your request fits within the requirements of granting a variance.
Sure. Okay, I will go through those specific points that I laid out in my variance application. I do want to point out that I have an email from Scarlett to our attorney, Mark Cansey, dated the 7th of July. And he was requesting information on helping us put together this variance, what specific code we were up against. And Scarlett says this, and I didn't include it in the packet and I should have, but Scarlett said, Mark, I've attached a copy of our variance application, which we used to apply for the variance. And then she said, this is the city code we were discussing. And she references Providence City Code 1143Q. It reads residential access to a major commercial or specified residential street. Access to a major commercial or specified residential street as shown on the general plan and or transportation corridor master plan from a residential unit, i.e. driveway cutout, shall only be allowed where no other option or solution exists. So if you'll refer to my packet, you'll see the layout of the lot. It's a long, narrower lot. It's the very eastmost lot in Providence Hollow, Phase 3. And just to the west of it, and from there west, the lots are too deep, I want to say, between Spring Creek Parkway and 525 North. So I guess I want to address first the application of this code, because then when Scarlett sent out her notes for this meeting, she referred to Utah Code 10-9A-103, which I did not ever address because I didn't realize that was the code that was restricting our lot. Maybe you guys can clarify for me how the restriction was placed on the lot.
Brian, is that a question for you?
Chad can either take that or I can.
I'm trying to find the packet here so that I can look, but I believe that the plat has it on the plat, right?
Yes, that's correct. It is on the plat. And when we talked to Scarlett and she indicated the code that was used to apply that to the plat was 1143Q. That's the code that I addressed in my variance application. So I guess I'll just go ahead and continue explaining my application based on that code.
If I can just quickly interrupt for a second, I'm trying to pull them both up so I can look at them together, but my recollection is that those codes are pretty much the same. There's state standards for variance that are in the land use code. And I think Providence, like most other cities, has adopted those into their ordinance. So I think we're probably talking about the same thing, but I'll pull it up and verify that.
Okay, great. So I laid
Mary,
out.
or Stephanie, just one quick one I think would be helpful for the group to see. I'm just going to share my screen. There is a map on limited access roads. So it will show which ones are classified as limited access roads. Just to see, it will have reference to the next one as well. Both of them kind of have that. That's okay?
Yep.
Randy, is that okay?
Yep, please do.
Okay. All right, can you see that screen right there?
I can't see the screen, but it is very tiny. I want to zoom it. Can you zoom in?
I can pull it to my other screen. I have a large one here. Let me try this way. And then I can zoom in here.
Okay. So I see that road is marked in purple and the purple indicates that it is a specified road. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Major or specified road. Yes.
Oh,
That's what
and
those, that's what that is.
And what is the date on that map?
The date on the map is January 31st, 2019.
Okay. I think that is that when the road was specified?
I don't know that that's when the road was specified. I have the date of the map and I have where it is. And so at some point when the plat was recorded, they recorded a restriction at that time.
Right.
And I believe that would have been a restricted road at the time. So that's why, I think that's why it comes in. This is kind of the base of the information. And it says it got recorded. Now the question is under the conditions of an appeal or a variance, do you qualify? But I'm just showing the reason why it probably got to where it did.
Sure.
Then you can talk about how it fits or doesn't fit the variance.
Can you, I guess I just want to address one portion of the code and maybe you can talk to it. The code specifically says that this is how it will be recorded. Access to a major commercial or specified residential street, which is what you're showing me right now. But it says, as shown on the general plan or transportation corridor master plan. And I looked at both of those on the city website and could not find this map that you have right here. So I'm wondering, where is the map? And is it meeting the requirement of being shown on the general plan and or the transportation corridor master plan?
Good question.
I also
Not
could not
sure.
find, I could only find what she found, the master road plan. And it did not list Spring Creek Parkway as a, whatever this is.
Restricted road. At some point it got recorded. I don't know why it wasn't included in the general plan. I don't know that. I would have expected it to be there. Whether that was an oversight or not, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I want to push back on that because the code says it will be on the general plan and or the transportation corridor master plan. And like I said, I looked at both of those. I couldn't find it. My attorney looked at it. He couldn't find it. Scarlett looked for it. She couldn't find it. And our traffic study engineers looked for it and they couldn't find it. So I guess what I want to go to is the fact that it leads to ambiguity because it wasn't recorded where it says it's supposed to be recorded.
So Craig, that's not an issue for this meeting though, is it?
No, we need to, well, yeah, we need to address the standards of the variance, but what they're, I guess, raising is kind of a separate issue, which is ambiguity.
Yes.
And I did address ambiguity in my variance application, so. If you guys want, I don't know if you have the ability to pull up some codes. Utah Code 10-9A-306. It says, if a land use regulation does not plainly restrict a land use application, the land use authority shall interpret and apply the land use regulation to favor the land use application. And I want to use that in regard to the variance application because I feel like it's not plain. If it were plain, it would be where it said it would be. I would have been able to find it.
Can I just enter in here as the city attorney? I'm assuming I'll have a chance to speak at some point, so I'm keeping my mouth shut right now until Stephanie's finished, so I'm not interrupting. Is that correct?
If you have something that will help the conversation, jump in.
Well, I basically, I don't want to chop up Stephanie's presentation.
I don't mind you talking to this point right here because I do feel like I addressed all of the variance requirements, but this is something outside of it in that I believe it's ambiguous. And maybe if we address that up front, there is not a need to go through the entire variance, but if it is a requirement to go through the rest of the variance application, I'm happy to do it.
Well, I would just say that perhaps that you've raised an issue of the ambiguity of the statute and how it's all, perhaps, but I would say that the fact that the plat is stamped with the restriction gives you a plain restriction. There's at this point, you're fighting the restriction on the plat itself. You're not, in my opinion,
Okay.
It's a very plain restriction on the plat.
Yes, correct. And I guess I want to address that with this point. Do you mind if I go for a minute, if I address it?
It's time right now, so that's why I didn't.
Okay. No, I appreciate it. As you noticed in our variance application, we referenced phase 1 of Providence Hollow, and we also referenced Little Baldy plat maps. And phase 1 is right on Spring Creek Parkway. I believe that when it was platted, Spring Creek Parkway may have not been named Spring Creek Parkway, and the naming of the road to make it flow through the city happened at some other point. But there are 4 homes in phase 1 that have access onto what is now Spring Creek Parkway. And then as you travel up through Spring Creek Parkway and it turns into 850 North, and that's the Little Baldy subdivision. There are 2 lots that are corner lots that would have access off of 200 North. And the plat is specifically stated they are not allowed access off of that ancillary road. They must access off of 850 North, which in essence is Spring Creek Parkway. So I think that speaks to ambiguity as well. Any comment on that?
I have a question for the city. What was the reasons allowing the houses on Spring Creek or on the phase 1 to allow corner lots to exit onto Spring Creek Parkway instead of the secondary street that they could have accessed? Why were they allowed onto Spring Creek Parkway?
Ryan, do you have an answer for that? I think I do. I know that Rob Stapley would probably be better to answer this, but I believe the answer is because the reason, one of the big reasons for limited access is obviously traffic control, but another big reason is cutting up the road after it's been put in. In phase 1, the road was not laid in. Later phases, when they come in and cut up the road, that creates more problems and more wear and tear on the road and so forth and so on. So one of the, at least that is a partial reason. Now I wasn't here when it was all put together that way, but that's one of the reasons that the first phase was allowed to be more accessing onto the parkway.
Can I address then the lots in Little Baldy, where the access states that they must access off 850 North, which is the main thoroughfare, and not off of the side road? The plat states that. And then I go back to ambiguity. Why in one subdivision does it say we're trying to save the road and not access and cut into the road, but in the further subdivision up the road, which is still essentially Spring Creek Parkway, you say not you, the city has stated and platted exactly the opposite?
Little Baldy is, which direction is that from where you're at?
You can look at the map in my packet. It's at the very north end of Spring Creek Parkway and it runs east and west. It's underneath the power lines up there on the very edge of the bench.
I mean, it runs north and south.
North and south, my bad. I'm sorry, it does run north and south.
That makes more sense.
Sorry about that.
So one of the drawbacks of being a newer city attorney is that I wasn't involved in all of the ESR reviews and so forth and so
Sure.
on. There's generally a lot of issues that go into this. And you know, again, the ambiguity question the reason we're here for a variance request
Sure.
because it's on your plat and your plat
Sure.
should fit to you. And,
Yeah.
that was all, in my opinion, again, this is my opinion, city attorney opinion, all of those arguments should have been made when the lot was platted by whoever
Yeah.
owned it at the time.
I'm going to interrupt you because I want to point out that the lot was platted by the property owner and his engineering firm. And I have to say, I believe it was probably some conflict of interest that the property owner could use his own engineering firm to plat the land. It seems like a conflict of interest, but regardless of that, the way that I'm looking at it is the rules were not applied equally in those 2 different subdivisions. So the fact that it was applied to my lot, hopefully my lot, and I have no access based on that, but those lots up in Little Baldy are required to access off that same road, that same major road, and it's platted, that is ambiguous. I would say it's ambiguous. So regardless of that, we can move forward, and I'll just go through each item of variance requirements and talk through my discussion points for granting the variance.
Stephanie,
The-
can I interrupt a second?
Sure, I would love that.
Because what you've been talking about could all be fixed, I would think, if you just filed for a plat amendment.
That's something I can do.
And just amend that plat.
Okay.
But I'm not your attorney. I can't tell you that that's the right thing to do, but that would allow you to get that stamp off of that, assuming the city approved it.
Okay, that is a good point and a note to move forward with if things don't go my way. Can you talk to the point, Randy, maybe of why plating would have worked that way in Providence Hollow Phase 3, but not in the Little Baldy, and they're both stamped?
No.
Okay, okay. Well, it is good to know that there are other options moving forward if this doesn't go my way. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Okay,
Ryan, were you trying to get in?
I am just kind of clarifying a couple of points that were made. Keep in mind that city code changes with city councils and adoption. So based on time frame, although Chad and I weren't, either one of us weren't here when it was adopted.
Yeah.
At that point, we just go with the current one that's there. And
sure. I
and
actually
so
researched that.
changes. So there may be some that it wasn't the ordinance then, and maybe it is now. I don't know. I haven't looked at that way. But
Well, I can speak to that because I did research it and the code did change, but the way that the code changed was changing the wording that says major commercial or specified roads from the word collector roads. And the application of that code to both Providence Hollow Phase 3 and Little Baldy, both of those applications were done after the change to that code was made.
And so if it was a collector defined, or whether it's a major road, whichever one. Anyway, my point was just that there is some that may change, that may explain it.
Sure.
One, I think that you're talking at this point about the plat amendment. Is it an option? Yeah, but I think you have to do both of these, both the variance committee. If the variance approves it, then yeah, you go to the plat amendment, take it off so that in the future it doesn't have some of that. But I'm not sure that one supersedes the other. I think there is two different challenges potentially. That depends on how the variance rules, but there could be potentially removing that. Either one of the attorneys on here could speak to that, but at this point, anyway, go ahead, Chad.
Just because you apply for an amendment doesn't mean that it would qualify. From the city's position, it is that is a limited access road, and we wouldn't, that's why you're here as a variance, because variance is to get a permission to do something that varies from the way the city sees the law, or the way the law is, I guess. So.
Sure. Like I said, I was just pointing to ambiguity about how the code is applied to that road, in that the lots down lower in Phase 1, it did not apply to those. And the lots up higher at the top of the bench, it did not apply to those the same way. And so I just wanted to point out, that it is ambiguous. And like I said, I referred to the code from the Utah Code 10-9A-306, which says if it doesn't plainly restrict it, which I feel like it didn't plainly restrict because it was not listed on the master plan or the transportation master plan as a specified road, that the authority shall interpret and apply the land use regulation to the favor of the land use applicant. And that is why I wanted to speak to that.
Is the restriction on your plat not plain?
The application of the restriction is not plain.
And here's what I think what we might be missing. What we may be missing in all of this is up in Little Baldy, it's on the plat, must access what is essentially Spring Creek Parkway on the map. So our trouble is down below, they can do whatever they want. We can't access it because our plat says you can't access it, but up above Little Baldy, that plat says you must access Spring Creek Parkway, same road.
And can you pull up your map again, the map that shows which roads are specified?
Hold on just a second.
Thank you.
All right, can you see it?
Okay, I can see that the application of the specified road stops at the corner of Spring Creek Parkway and 850 North. I don't know if anyone can speak to how roads are specified. I could not find any indication of how roads are specified. Can anyone speak to that?
Oftentimes they're classified based on design and amount of expected traffic.
Okay, I would like to have my traffic engineers speak to their study regarding the amount of traffic. I know I included their study in my packet. And Josh, do you want to just talk about the way that you performed the study and what your findings were?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, this is Josh Gibbons and Ryan Hales from Hales Engineering. We did a study to look at kind of the impact on traffic operations, also safety. I'll touch on that briefly. Just to talk about the traffic operations, we looked at the CASH Metropolitan Planning Organization travel demand model, which I'm sure some of you have heard of, that looks at the projected land uses in the future and what the traffic volumes are going to be in the future. While they didn't have specific volumes assigned to these roadways in this part of town, they showed that the land uses within this area would generate a total of 10,500 trips per day. And that encompasses a large area from the Spring Creek area all the way down to Center Street approximately. So that whole area, they're saying it'll generate just above 10,000 trips per day. And with Center Street and Spring Creek being the primary roads coming through here, we're estimating just over 5,000 vehicles per day on this road and Center Street. Our standard practice when we look at two-lane roadways is, two-lane roads can handle approximately 10,000 vehicles per day before there's a poor level of service and poor traffic operations. So if we're looking at about 5,000 trips per day, and sorry, that's a 2040 number, so 20 years out from now, if we're looking at 5,000 cars a day on the road with a capacity of 10,000, the traffic operations look good on the road, and it looks like Spring Creek Parkway can handle that 5,000 a day. Do you want me to touch on the safety portion as well?
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks.
While I'm talking, so you probably saw our study. We took a look at the site distance from this lot 20 compared to other lots, just to see, if it's less safe or more safe than others. And you'll see that we looked at site distance based on national standards, which is based on from an organization called AASHTO. Where we need to be able to see from driveways on Spring Creek Parkway, we need to be able to see just over 300 feet down each side of the road. So if you're looking east or kind of to your left from this lot, we need to see 319 feet away. If we're looking down the road to the west, we need to see 302 feet. So we sketched out those, we call them site triangles on the figures we have in there. From lot 20, the site distance looks pretty good actually, because they're kind of on the outside of a curve. The site distance is good there. If there were to be an access there, they could be able to see down the road pretty well. We did a comparison of a lot around the corner, part of the same subdivision. The comparison was lot 27. That one was on the other curve, and because of its position, it doesn't have great sight distance, so there might be some safety issues there for that lot. So from a comparison standpoint, lot 20 had good sight distance and good safety compared with the other lots nearby. So,
Yeah, and then I just want to add that you did also note that there is no competing access across the Spring Creek Parkway from Lot 20, whereas there are lots platted out across the street from all of the other lots in Providence Hollow Phase 3, and they will have competing access across the road, and Lot 20 will not.
that's correct. Yeah, we did note that in our study. We tried to avoid those conflicts where possible, especially if it's a small offset in driveways. So yeah, because there's no, access plan on the other side as of now, that also adds a safety benefit to this lot.
Okay. And then, Josh, I wonder if you would just also address when you were looking for the specification of this road in relation to Providence City Code 11-4-3. Were you able to find that this road was specified in relation to that code?
We were not, but like you were saying earlier, we looked all around to see all the maps we could find. We found the general plan, which had, I have it up here. I guess it had the transportation classification map in there, dated January and February of this year. We found the transportation corridor plan, and both the classification seems to be a collector, so we did point that out as well, like you pointed out, that it wasn't clear whether it qualified that exact code or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Does anyone have any questions for Josh regarding the study? Okay, I'll go ahead and move through the variants then. Josh, thanks so much for talking through that.
Okay. Get off now, or do you want to stay on?
Do you guys see that you'll need any more talking with Josh, or are you good with what he presented? Anyone?
I'm good with it.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay, thank you guys so much, Hales.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, I'll go ahead and talk through the variance requirements then. The first 2A1 is unreasonable hardship. And unreasonable hardship says the literal enforcement of Land Use Ordinance 1143 would cause an unreasonable hardship for the applicant that is not necessary to carry out the general purpose of the Land Use Ordinance. And we're actually talking about unreasonable hardship in two ways, in that this lot is steeply sloped. And if you had a chance to drive by it and you saw the drop from the south end of the lot to the north end of the lot, you can see that's very steeply sloped. And like I mentioned before, it's unique from the other lots in the subdivision in that it's the only lot that has frontage on Spring Creek Parkway and also frontage on 525 North. All the lots to the west are basically split in half, so they only have frontage on one of those roads. So it's a unique lot. It's a little more narrow and definitely longer. And when we were looking at ways to set a house on this lot, we talked to another engineer, Brian Lyon with Alliance Engineering, and talked about the best use of this lot regarding the topography and just that cutting into a steep slope disturbs it and increases the possibility of erosion in the future, that the best use of the lot would be to minimize cutting into the slope. And I did read through the study that Scarlett attached in the email that we just got before we came on. It was once again done by Civil Solutions Engineering, which is the company owned by the developer. So I'm not sure if I don't know if there's a conflict of interest in there or not, but it never addresses cutting of the slope. It only addresses the slope as it stands. And the point that I bring to you is it's unreasonable hardship to ask us to cut further into the slope by asking us to access the lot from the north, have the front set back, and then the slope is actually oriented closer to that north side. So to build a home with a basement like we all want to do here, it would require more cutting into the hill. So Brian indicated to us the best and highest use of that lot with its natural topography would be to access from the south side and minimize the scarring and risk of future erosion issues. I think the Hales already addressed their study, which is also addressed in hardship. I just stated, in addition, the traffic study conducted by Hales states there are topographical difficulties in installing an access on 525 North. The study shows the best and safest access for lot 20 is on Spring Creek Parkway that has a better line of sight than lots 26, 27, 28, and 29, which already enjoy access on Spring Creek Parkway. Lot 20 does not have an opposing access across the street on the opposite side of Spring Creek Parkway, and the enforcement of the ordinance is not necessary to carry out the general purpose of the land use. Any questions on that? Comments? Okay, I'll move on to 2A2. There are special circumstances attached to the property that do not generally apply to other properties in the same zone. Special circumstances refer to physical conditions unique to the property, which relates to the hardship and makes compliance difficult or impossible. Once again, I talk about the topography and the depth of the ledges, the upper ledge versus the lower ledge, and the requirements for setbacks. And if we're required to access from the north side of the lot and the setbacks that are required there, we will be cutting further into that steep slope and obviously increasing the risk for future erosion based on that. 2A3.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
When you were speaking with your engineers about the layout of the land, I went and walked it multiple times up one
Sure.
side and down the other and looked at it.
Thank you, Mary.
And did they indicate that there would be any problems, not only with erosion, if doing it with the driveway facing north, but would there be problems cutting into the banks that would lead to problems with the stability of the home once it's built?
They said that they would need to do a further in-depth study to address that possibility, but they were very adamant that the increased risk of erosion was very real based on accessing from the north. And, you know, as an applicant for a variance, I will say I spent a lot of time and quite a bit of money getting to the points that I'm addressing here. And it's where I drew my line. I didn't want to pay for that additional study to address, you know, the stability of the, yeah. But I appreciate the
I
question
understand,
because it's definitely a concern. And I think the purpose of city codes is the best public interest. And I guess that's where I'm trying to get with this is, it's not just for my own aesthetic benefit or my own desire, like minimizing future possible erosion is not just important to me, it's important to those two lots that are just west of me. You know, they certainly won't want my slope coming down into their yard, just like I don't want my slope sliding. They would expect, and I would expect, the city would want to apply a code and use generally accepted engineering practices that will decrease the possibility of erosion. And like I said, the study that was done, the study that Scarlett referred to in her notes today, did not address cutting into that slope. So any other questions on that?
I'm good.
Thanks, Mary. 2A3, granting the variance is essential to the enjoyment of a substantial property right possessed by other property in the same zone. The substantial property right includes access to land at the point determined to allow the highest and best use of the property. Both engineering firms stated the best and highest use is gained from accessing lot 20 on Spring Creek Parkway. Hales Engineering references other properties in that same zone which possess this right. In addition, the following lots in Providence Hollow Phase 1 enjoy this right, even though alternative access with no hardship was available to these lots, and they still receive the right to access on Spring Creek Parkway. And I've referenced those parcel numbers, and you can see it on the attached plat map for lots in Phase 1. And then I again address 850 East, which is an extension of Spring Creek Parkway, and talk about how those two lots that are on corners of a subsidiary road specifically state that access must be off of 850, not off of the side road. So I would say they are enjoying a substantial property right that this code is preventing me from enjoying. In addition, I just want to note that all of those lots are corner lots There are no other lots in any of these subdivisions I've been referencing that are similar to my lot in that there is a south-facing access point or a north-facing access point. It's not the same as accessing from around a corner. I believe that if you can access around the corner, you can situate your home at your convenience to be placed wherever you need on the lot and still have similar access, whether you're accessing from the front of the home or the side of the home. And that's not true for a lot like ours, where you would have to access from the back. At some point, it would be the back or the front of the home. So any questions on that? Okay, 2A4, the variance will not substantially affect the general plan and will not be contrary to the public interest. The integrity of the general plan is maintained and aesthetically improved by granting this variance. Lot 20 will remain a residential building lot. The general plan is unaffected. Granting access to Lot 20 from Spring Creek Parkway will increase the aesthetic of the subdivision and the zone. Having all the homes on the north side of Spring Creek Parkway oriented the same direction, the home fronts all face south, will increase the general eye appeal of the area, which is in the best interest of the public. In contrast, forcing access to Lot 20 from 525 North will result in a home built on Lot 20 with the rear of the home and its backyard fencing facing the parkway. It will look out of place and it will detract from the general aesthetic value of the development. It also implies a hardship on us as landowners, as we know building a fence line on a roadway, you're not able to build your fence as tall as you possibly may want to. In general, a 6-foot fence to enclose your kids or your dogs or whatever it is you're fencing in is not allowed right on a main road. So there is that issue that I did not address. I just noted that to maintain uniformity of the development and increase the aesthetics of the development, a variance should be granted. And then 2A5, the spirit of the land use ordinance is observed and substantial justice is done. I believe the spirit of the land use ordinance is the health, safety, and welfare of the public as addressed by the zoning ordinances. As applicants for this variance, I invested a lot of time and money into ensuring the spirit of the land use ordinance is observed. We did the traffic study. We compared to other lots that are similar to ours, not the same, but similar. And we found that granting the variance will positively affect the health, safety, and welfare of the public in the neighborhood, in that we will reduce the possible erosion in the future by reducing the cutting into the slope. These positive effects come from minimizing scarring and respecting the topographical anomalies, like I said. Substantial justice is done when the best interests of the public and the landowner coincide and allow for the best and highest use of the land. Item 2B, determining whether or not enforcement of the land use ordinance would cause unreasonable hardship. The appeal authority may not find unreasonable hardship unless the hardship is located on or associated with the property for which the variance is sought. Yes, that is true. The hardship is on and associated with the property. I just referenced the Hales Engineering study regarding line of sight and also my talking points regarding erosion and slope issues. The circumstances are peculiar to the property and not conditions general to the neighborhood. Yes, because the property has a better line of sight than the other lots and no competing access across the parkway. And also because of the shape of this lot and possible access points. It's not a corner lot, it's a long lot with access on north and south. Is the hardship self-imposed or economic? I don't believe it is. I believe I've shown that with our study and with the reference to the topography. Special circumstances exist. If the special circumstances relate to the hardship complained of, yes, I referenced special circumstances earlier. The physical conditions make adherence to the ordinance difficult or impossible. And do the special circumstances deprive the property of privileges granted to other properties? Yes, and I talk again to the other properties on Spring Creek Parkway that have access onto the parkway, even though they had other options. So that's my variance application. So how do we go from here?
The members of the appeal authority get to talk about it with each other. And so
Do I get to stay?
You get to stay.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Do you mind, Chairman, if I just address a couple of those issues?
Please do.
And listen, Stephanie, I am absolutely overwhelmed and impressed with your presentation. I was also impressed with your packet. I've probably sat through hundreds of these variance requests. Well, maybe not hundreds, but a lot of variance requests. And I've done several of them, and I think you've done better than any I've ever done. So,
Well, I hope it turns out like I like then.
well, listen, my job as the city attorney is to try to poke some holes in your argument a little bit.
Sure, sure.
You know, from the city standpoint, I'll tell, I always seem to be, I love Providence. I don't live in Providence. And I always seem to be at odds with the city residents because my job kind of puts me in a position where I have to sit. But I would say that the number one argument that I have against Stephanie here is the idea. And one thing that I'm unclear on, Stephanie, you guys haven't purchased this property yet, have you? Is this like due diligence or?
We have it under contract and our performance date is the 3rd of September. So we are hoping that we can come to a decision and obviously we're hoping that we can get that access because we truly feel like access off 525 North will minimize the value of the lot itself and also of a home that's built there just because of the restrictions that will be required based on that north facing access, the layout of the home, length of the driveway. Are you going to put your garage under your home? I mean, what it basically does is force you to build something that is not in accordance with what is, I guess I would say not what is a normal build for this area. And that doesn't mean that it can't be done, but for us, looking at the slope of the lot, the erosion issue, the safety of accessing off of Spring Creek Parkway, we feel like enforcing this ordinance on this lot, I feel like it's unnecessary and that it is a hardship.
Okay, so let me just address I've got about 5 points. I'll try to be brief. I'm an attorney, so I have a hard time with being brief, but the ambiguity issue, the reason ambiguity in the law is a bad thing is because people are not put on notice of what the law is. That's why I don't think that's an issue here. The law is on your plat. You're here because you are on notice of this. You didn't buy the property. You haven't at least consummated the purchase of property because you are on notice. So the ambiguity, in my opinion, doesn't make any difference. It's on the plat, and therefore it's very plain.
I guess I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm not saying it's ambiguous on the plat. I'm saying the application of the code is ambiguous, right?
I'm just saying that to me, the ambiguity issue is not an issue because you are here and you know what the city's position is, at least on this.
Sure.
Unreasonable hardship issue, are there other options? You can go buy another property if you don't like it.
Sure.
Special circumstances on that lot, all, if not most, if not all of the properties in that area have slope issues.
Yeah. Have you driven past it? Have you been on it? Did you walk it like Mary did?
I've been there many times, and we've had a lot of issues in this area. Believe me, the reason why there are so many different types of restrictions up there is many and varied. The construction of this area was incredibly difficult.
Yes.
For many reasons. And so the idea that, it's kind of piecemealed together, the city doesn't get to choose how developers do things. And so the city can only come in and try to enforce their ordinances the best of their ability and get what it is they need. So the reason some of those are this way and some of those are that way, a lot of it was negotiated with the developers and so forth and so on. And so I would argue that the special circumstances is not there. I think all of those lots have special have issues, and
Sure.
I
I,
think my
sorry,
bet.
I just want to interrupt you for a second because I understand that is your opinion, but I will say that our engineer here locally with Alliance Engineering disagrees, and he is a professional in that area. So I understand and accept your opinion, but I will counter it with the opinion of a civil engineer who has
So
evaluated the property.
Stephanie, I let you speak. Will you please just let me finish?
Oh, I apologize. I did not mean to overstep. I apologize.
Well, that's the reason why I tried to just keep my mouth shut, because I could have
I
argued the
apologize.
whole time with you too, but
I definitely will do that. I apologize.
it's very clear. Look, Stephanie, it's very clear that you disagree with me. I think everybody knows that, and you've done a really good job of presenting your argument. So I'm just trying to put
Sure.
the city's position out there.
Okay.
Let me just make two more points. One
Sure,
is that there's a continuum on the economic scale. If you boil it down to a nutshell, I think you can make everything in the world into an economic issue. There's very, very few things you can't fix with a lot of money. I think it boils down to how much money that is. But a lot of the issues you're talking about boil down to how much money you can spend or how much money you want to spend on fixing these issues. The city's position is those are economic issues, and the hardship, while you didn't cause them, you don't have to buy the property. The last thing is the public interest. One of the big things, the reasons we have variances is because there are times when they're needed. And I'm not luckily for Stephanie, I'm not the one that has to decide on this. That's why we have an appeal authority. I'm just the spokesman for the city. But on a public interest point of view, one of the things that scares me to death as the city attorney up in that area, and I'll tell you, is that if people come before the board and say that they're not going to follow the plats that we've laid out for various reasons, the precedent of changing those plats could be catastrophic in a lot of ways. And so from the idea that the precedent of overturning those issues is I don't know if sacrosanct is too strong of a word for me, but that area up there has been incredibly hard to develop. I got involved in it at the end. And so I wasn't involved in the very beginning of it all, but it has been incredibly difficult. And a lot of the reasons those plat restrictions are in place is because of the issues that you've addressed, and so forth. So that's all I'll say. I don't know if Ryan, do you have anything to add to that you feel the city needs to say?
I think that addresses it. I'd say that kind of summarizes what the city feels. And that's why it comes to a variance. That's why the nice thing with a variance committee with Stephanie, so that you know, the nice thing is a variance committee doesn't consist of any city employee or city official. These are independent, appointed, and it is nice that they get to make and review it. They get to review what it is, independent, and then they get to make the choice. And I think that's great. It will be in their hands. I just want to make sure both sides have had their opportunity to have the position present so that Mary, Randy, and Ed can be educated enough on the issues that then they can go ahead and make the choice. So I think that's been done in my position as far as the city. So
So
My
Stephanie, did you have something else you wanted to say before we?
Yeah.
Hi, this is Wade. I'm the
Thanks,
hubby.
Randy.
I just wanted to make sure it was clear that everybody understood. It sounds like the idea is, well, it was on the plat, right? Well, it's the same road, and the plat up above clearly says you must access off of what is Spring Creek Parkway. So whoever did it and whatever time it was done, the plat up there says you must access Spring Creek Parkway. And the plat that we're dealing with, as it deals with Lot 20, which is completely unique in its makeup, which Stephanie's done a great job of explaining, that plat says you, Lot 20, cannot have access off of Spring Creek. And I know it's none of your fault. I know it's nobody's fault, but if you're going to say, look at the plat, I'm going to say, look at the plat up above. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
And I just want to say that that goes to substantial property rights. And like Wade said, when the code is enforced and when it is not enforced is not something for us to debate here. But what we can say as part of the variance application says, is the variance essential to the enjoyment of a substantial property right possessed by other properties? And I think that's what he wanted to get to there, is that not only is it enjoyed by other property, but it is mandated by this exact same code in the same zone. So with that said, I think we have discussed all of our points, and I wonder if any of the appeals authority has any questions for us or anything going further.
We may.
Okay, I'll stop talking. I know I do it. I apologize. And I apologize to you for talking over you and interrupting.
So stay with us.
Sure.
So if you're done, is the city done presenting its arguments?
I believe so, Randy.
Okay. Craig, do you have instructions for us as the attorney for the appeal committee?
Well, I do. First, a couple things. One is, if you want to decide in this meeting, which you can, what I would recommend you do is take a vote, and then I would prepare findings and conclusions in writing, which then you would adopt. We'd have to have a second meeting to do that, because I don't have any prepared, because I don't know how you're going to vote and what findings and conclusions make. That way you have a written decision to go forward on if either party, the city could or the applicant could appeal this on further to the district court. I'm not saying they should or would or could or, but they can. And so I think that makes so that we have a clear record of what your decision is. And I've got a case that's now on cert at the Utah Supreme Court where it was a decision of planning commission and there was no written anything. And it's a kind of a mess because, you listen to the tape of what was said and why did they do this? So that's number one. I would recommend that. Obviously, you don't have to follow my advice. You can just say, Greg, you're being overly formalistic and not do it. But I would recommend we do that. Second, unlike some of the other public bodies, you actually have, if you choose to, can have a private meeting to have your deliberations. And because you're a quasi judicial body, you're not the city council, you're not the planning commission. I'm not saying you should need to do that. But I just want to make sure that you understand that's an option for you if you choose to exercise it. You don't have to, it's up to you. Beyond that is the only other thing I would mention is, on the variance, the applicant, I think, did a good job going through all of the findings you need to make. You need to make those findings to grant a variance. So if the appeal authority can make those findings, that would be part of the written decision that you made those findings on a variance. On the other issue of the ambiguity or unclearness of whether this street is or not is not a restricted access street. I know I'm not using the exact right terms. That is also something that even though there was only a variance appeal filed, they've raised that here. That's the other thing that land use appeal authorities do have the right to determine. And to do that, you have to presume that, but we have to go for that, a presumption that the decision by the land use authority below was, yeah, unless it is arbitrary, capricious, or illegal, then it should be upheld. Now, illegality, and the applicant did also a very good job of, that is correct. When you're construing a statute, it's construed in favor of the applicant when it's a land use regulation. So those are kind of some of the basic rules that I wanted to kind of lay out, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody on the appeal authority has.
Okay, then I have a couple of questions for the committee. One is, I assume we want Craig to write findings and conclusions for us. Is that true?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Okay. Second is, do you want to have this discussion in public, or do you want to do it with just us?
In the past, we've done it with just the committee many times.
I have met with just the committee also on the previous one.
So what's your preference?
I like doing it with just the committee.
Just the committee.
Well, that's 2 votes, and that's all you have to do with a 3-person committee to be able to count to 2. So we'd like to have, Ryan, how are you going to do this so that we have Craig and the 3 of us?
That's what I was going to chime in. If you're going to do private deliberation, maybe what we ought to do is hear the next one, then
Okay.
we let them go, and we can have and come back to the deliberation. We can release everybody out of the meeting and leave it to you, stop the recording, stop all of that, and then turn it to you to have it at that point. I think that's easiest on my end administratively. If you have another idea, I'm happy to entertain.
I'm fine with that. Is that
I think that works well.
okay?
That works.
Ed, you're good?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay, let's roll.
How are you guys doing today? Thanks for being willing to meet and entertain this variance for lot 29 in Orchard Hills.
Tell us who you are, Mike.
So yes, I'm Mike Carter, and I work with Olo Builders.
Okay,
So I do the portfolio managing.
and you're representing the landowner and the developer?
Correct.
Okay. Well then, explain to us why we should be granting a variance for, what was it, lot 29?
Lot 29, yes. So hopefully you've all received the packet and read through our letter that we submitted. And basically what I'd like to do is read through that word for word verbatim. It hits all of the points that we're looking at here. So we're looking at the phase 2 for the Orchard Hills subdivision. And this is again, lot 29. So I'll go ahead and read this to you guys. So again, thank you for your time and your consideration for this variance application. This is for address 612 East, 1000 South in Providence, also referred as lot 29 in Orchard Hills phase 2 subdivision. Olo Builders has been retained by the owners of the property of 612 East, 1000 South, Jason and Tammy Benson. The Bensons are building their retirement home in the same neighborhood they raised their family. The lot and the home afforded the Bensons an opportunity to downsize and remain connected to their family and friends here in Orchard Hills. So again, this is 612 East, 1000 South, and this lot offers some challenges to building the home that are different from a lot of the other lots around here. So the Bensons requested their home to face north to give them the best possible backyard for their new home. They're also concerned with the unusual amount of electrical and data junction boxes that were located in the far northeast corner of the lot. Olo Builders did completely miss a note on the plat stating that lot 29 could not exit the driveway onto 1000 South. In the address section on the recorded plat, it did show two address options, and we moved forward with the plan to have their driveway face north and exit on 1000 South. So based on the instructions from Providence City to apply for a variance, I have been asked to outline the case for a variance approval for the driveway at 612 East 1000 South in Providence, Utah code annotated 10-9A-702. So basically, again, this lot allows us to have two separate addresses, being that it is a corner lot. And do any of you have a plat map available?
We do.
You do? So
Yeah.
that way you can have that reference, or I can just share my
Yes.
screen.
I can
No,
share
I do.
If you'd like, either way.
Let me go ahead and share my screen.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay,
looks like
okay.
it says the host disabled attendees to share screen. So it looks like I am not able to.
I
No,
can-
it was working.
Somebody did.
Hold on just a sec.
Somebody did.
Was that you, Ryan?
I shared mine, but I can have him share his. Hold on just a second.
That would be great.
Okay, now try it.
Oh, perfect. It is working now.
Uh,
All right, so hopefully you can see the plat and the highlighted lot 29 there. And you can see here that, I guess it might be a little challenging to see, but it does allow for lot 29 to have those two different addresses, one facing north and one facing west. So originally when we had applied, we'd submitted our permit. So the client does own this lot, and we submitted all of our build permits and everything like that. And we did get the green light from Providence City. Our building permit was approved, and we mobilized, and we did dig the lot after that approval. 30 minutes later, we were told that approval was revoked. And so I wanted to share with you, this is the lot here that has been dug after that approval. So unfortunately, I was unable to stop my mobilization once we were given that green light. And so one thing I wanted to show you, this leads into the next portion of this, as we discuss the appeal authority variance reasons. And so first of all here, I wanted let's go ahead and move right into the application for variance and those points. So the appeal authority may grant a variance only if literal enforcement of the ordinance would cause an unreasonable hardship for the applicant that is not necessary to carry out the general purpose of the land use ordinance. So as you can see right now, being that this has been dug the way that it is after we had been given the go ahead, that would cause some unreasonable hardship for one, having to re-excavate, over-excavate, and accrue some of those costs. But that's referring to the letter, I guess. Yeah. Again, at this point, the Benson's lot has been prepped, graded, and partially dug to build a Rambler-style home with an unfinished basement with a driveway exiting on 1000 South. There would be unnecessary costs, delays, and unreasonable hardship to the Bensons if the lot need to be re-prepped, regraded, redug, or positioned to face west. So moving on here, the next A2 here, being that there are special circumstances attached to the property that do not generally apply to other properties in that same zone. And that refers to all these data junction boxes here, if you can see that. So one reason that the clients wanted to have their home exit north is that they didn't want to have these junction boxes in their backyard, and rather have them up against the driveway here. Also allowing better access for anybody that needs to access these to perform maintenance. I don't actually know what all of these data junction boxes are, but it is a good portion of the corner of their backyard there. So those are sort of the I guess those are the special circumstances of this lot. There is not another lot that has this type of intense data junction access on the lot. So I don't know if a fence would need to be put around these or how that would need to be rectified, but that is definitely one of the special circumstances of this particular lot and having full access to that backyard. So moving on to A3, granting the variance is essential to the enjoyment of a substantial property right possessed by the owner in the same zone. So basically, I explained that with having all those junction boxes in the backyard. So moving on here to A5. So the variance will not substantially affect the general plan and will not be contrary to the public interests. And the spirit of the land use ordinance is observed and substantial justice done. So having our lot, if you look across here to the north, you can see that the house right across the street does have access to 1000 here, as do all of the lots. As you can see down the line, that they all are able to access 1000, as well as if we reference the plat again here, we have lot 27 is able to exit onto 1000 south. So I don't know exactly the reasoning behind this particular lot not having access to this road, being that the lot across the street in the other subdivision does have access to it. So let's see here, what else do we have? Those really are all of my points at this point. I feel that it just seems common sense that we'd be allowed to have a driveway exit this direction and allow these particular new residents of, I guess they're not new, but these new homeowners here to enjoy their backyard without having all these junction boxes obstruct their yard. So anyway, this is what we have, and I move the floor back to you.
We hear from the city? Brian, do we still have the city attorney?
Yep, I think we're both here. Chad's here. Go ahead. You want to talk on it, Chad, or you want me to?
Well, I would just submit that it's pretty much the same arguments as I gave in the last one. It's really the same, a very similar situation. I think that's why we're hearing them both. The only thing I'm not certain about, and I haven't at one point, Mike, I was told, and I'm not saying this is absolute truth, but I was told that digging started before the approval. Is that true, or do you know?
I do not know on that.
Okay.
I can find out for you.
I don't want to throw a wrench in the works on this, but
Sure.
I was at least at one time told that digging started before the actual approval came through. Neither here nor there, the city would still say that this sets a bad precedence. As I look at those maps, and even Mike showed that only there are other properties that aren't allowed to access onto that road. The reason the city, one of the big reasons is we want to try to keep that road as limited access as possible. These limited access roads, there's a reason for that, and it's safety and it's drivability, and there's a lot of other reasons for it, but they're limited access roads for a reason, and that's the city's position that there are some economic issues to those properties, and it isn't unreasonable for the city to put restrictions on a property that makes it more expensive to develop on.
Sure.
It does depend on how unreasonable they are, I think, and that's why we have an authority to make these decisions. And if they think the city's being a little too unreasonable, or if these variants. One of the things that I would like to point out just with variance requests in general is there's a very specific, you have to meet those requirements. And one of the hardest hurdles is always that economic issue, because everything's economic, right? You could build
Sure.
whatever you want to on that property if you have enough money.
Yeah.
But, you know, I recognize that there are times when you do meet those. But for the city, the biggest is the public interest of being able to enforce our ordinances and keep as many properties from accessing these limited access roads as possible. Unfortunately, every time we go through this process, every developer wants all their properties to dump out on the same road, it seems like.
Yeah.
And we are constantly always trying to say, well, let's put this on the plat that these ones cannot. And then, you know, if we let the cat out of the bag and everybody starts saying, oh, well, they got a variance, then pretty soon our limited access roads are no longer limited access. And that would be my position as the city. Ryan, if you have anything else to add.
I would just add that those on the north side of there, if you look at the plat of those ones, they don't have cross streets like the 540 East and those streets. They don't have those to access onto because they are lined up, and their only access is to the street because they don't have an adjacent street to them. So I would just make note. You can see that right in that picture. You're right. Those ones. Yep. But I would say those are examples that they don't have another choice because they're not on a corner lot, and the only lot that faces for their access is that street. But otherwise, Chad, I think you did a good job summarizing that. So agreed, similar arguments.
Mike, can you unshare your screen?
I certainly can.
There we are.
Here we go.
Okay, does the appeals committee have any questions for Mike or the city?
No.
I have a question. I wasn't quite clear on when they got the signed permit to start building and when they actually started digging.
So I'll have to check on the time frame. Diane with Providence City did call me and say that it had been approved. And approximately 30 minutes later, she called and said, actually, hold on. And I think that's when the site plan was then viewed by someone else, I guess. I don't know how it was missed or why it was approved and then revoked or how that got missed. But as far as the timeline of when this was dug, but that is something that I can review.
One item, just Mary, just so that you know, and that it was approved through the zoning clearance, but building permits are issued because we have a contract with the county. Building permits actually are issued through the county, but the zoning clearance, so that we just are clear on what was approved. The zoning clearance was approved, and you usually take that to the building permit and then apply for your building permit, and then you start construction. So anyway, yeah,
something really
just a
quick.
clarification.
So this had to go through the land use authority, and we had a meeting, and with the land use authority, they approved it. And then right away, Max called and said, you put something on the plat. And so then we called Mike and said, you need to hold on for a minute. He was never issued the zoning permit.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Thanks for that.
I think the digging started before the permit was issued. Actually, there was no permit issued. The digging started.
Right.
Meeting.
Yep.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
No.
All right. Then Ryan, if you can figure out how to turn this into a private meeting, that would be
And while he's doing that, can we take a couple minute break so I can run to the bathroom? I'm sorry to have to be so coarse, but it's been a
Well, you know,
while. I need to-
You are aging.
We know.
I am aging, that's right. You knew me when I was a young man. That's unfortunately gone. I'll be right back.
That are not part of
Okay.
the board to exit off, and I will start either exit off or I will
You will close
politely
off.
disconnect.
Do you need
Okay.
anything else, Ryan? Do you want me
I
to?
don't.
Okay, I'll keep my phone available if you have anything for me.
All
Thank
right.
you very much. We appreciate it. Good job, Stephanie and Mike. Both of you did a good job.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Well prepared. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
How soon will we know if we either have approval or denial with our requests?
I assume within a week.
Within a week?
Mhm.
Okay. And I guess we'll be looking for an email from you then.
Okay.